Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for registering and logging in to our webinar today with the leaders of Venture Lab. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jerry Houston. I'm president of the Wharton Alumni Founder and Funders Association. And for those of you who may not be as familiar with WAFA, we're an alumni club who is on the mission to increase the number of Penn Wharton female founders and increase the amount of funding those female founders get. So if you aren't familiar with the stats, about 13% of founders that come out of Penn are women, and that's not just Wharton, but all of Penn. And those 13% of the founders only raise about 6% of the venture capital awarded to Penn founders. So we are a community that would like to change that by mobilizing our really powerful alums to help support, promote Penn Wharton female founders. And Venture Lab and Taylor and Trang have been such great supporters of WAFA. We're so excited to have them here today to tell us everything that's new with Venture Lab, formerly known as Penn Wharton Entrepreneurship Programs. I'm probably getting that wrong, but they'll fill us in. And all of the new developments around Tangen Hall, which is a very exciting new development and epicenter for entrepreneurship on campus. I'm joined by my colleague, Miriam Williams, who's going to be here helping me manage the webinar. So you'll notice that there is a Q&A box, a chat box. As you have questions during the presentation or at any point, please type them in. After the presentation, we'll take those questions that have been typed in the chat or in the Q&A box. And so I'll just hand it over to Miriam briefly to go over kind of the house rules and how all of that's going to work.
Yeah, so Jara touched on it. First, just a quick plug, if everybody can complete the poll, which you should see at the bottom middle of your screen with the little bar chart. Just let us know where you are and what your Penn affiliation is. And either type your question into the Q&A, or if you don't want it to be public, feel free to also message it to me, and we'll walk through the questions once Taylor and Trang are done with the presentation. And if you're having any technical difficulties, I'll be monitoring for that too, so just let me know.
Great. Thanks, Miriam. One last housekeeping item. We are recording this session, and after we've had a chance to do a little editing, we will be posting it on the WAFA website. So if you have any friends who wanted to attend and they couldn't make it, this will be recorded. You'll also get an email with the link to the recording when it's ready too, if you've registered. And if you don't know where the WAFA website is, it's just hello WAFA, hello WAFFA.org. So you can go there and see all of our past webinars at any time. It's a pretty good collection of content for founders and funders. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our guests today. It's Trang Pham, who is the Executive Director of Venture Lab and also an alumna. Welcome. And Taylor Durham, who is the Associate Director of Communications at Venture Lab. And I have to give a shout out to Taylor. First of all, thank you for joining us today, but also thank you for all of the support you've given to WAFA over the last 2 years. It's really been so great to work with you and stay connected to Venture Lab and to campus through you. So Taylor, thank you. All your efforts are very much appreciated. Well, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our Venture Lab leaders so that we can get the scoop on what is new and what's going on campus as the hub for entrepreneurship. So Trang and Taylor, please take it away.
Great, thank you, Jara and Miriam. You know, I'm very excited to present today to WAFA because, as you can see, I am a woman, I am a Wharton alumna, and I also think it's fair to note that I'm an Asian American immigrant. So, you know, I recognize that my appointment as executive director is a really historic one among our peer schools. And what I think, you know, I've been incredibly grateful to Carl Ulrich, who's our Vice Dean of Entrepreneurship, for making this happen. Because, you know, when I looked at a position like this, I just thought, well, positions like these don't typically go to people who look like me. And so I'm very cognizant of the responsibility that we have to support our alumni entrepreneurs and especially our female founders and investors. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here. Today, we're going to touch on a few things. First, actually, Taylor, can you go to the next slide? Hi, Wafa. Today, we're going to touch on a few things. First, you'll hear from me on what Venture Lab is and on what we have to offer, especially to our alumni who want to pursue entrepreneurship and innovation. Then you'll hear from Taylor, our communications director, on key challenges that we're facing and on our communication strategy for Venture Lab. And then he'll talk about how we're responding to COVID-19 and our virtual community. Just a little bit about me here. First, I'm a former management consultant who's had some amazing opportunities to plan and launch new technology products and services around the world. One of my best projects was piloting mobile money in Kenya, and I've just kind of dated myself there. But today, it processes about 20 million customers and 47 billion in annual transactions. So it's pretty sizable, and it's pretty cool to have been able to participate in. After Wharton, I helped set up and run a technology incubator with another Wharton alumni that commercializes deep tech that's been created in the government defense and aerospace labs. And then this opportunity popped up and I just couldn't pass it up because I came back to Philadelphia because I loved my Wharton experience and I loved starting and growing new things. And I really wanted to be part of helping our community start new things too. And on the bottom of the slide, I've also provided some of my contact information. So if you're new to our community, or even if you've been here a while and we haven't met, please feel free to send me an email and to, just take some time out to introduce yourself. And I'd really love it. Can you go to the next slide, Taylor? I also wanted to introduce a little bit about our team and our organization. So who are we? I'd say as an organization, our mission is to maximize the ability of Penn students and alumni to address important challenges through entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial thinking. And I just really want to emphasize again that we're a Wharton Center who's here to serve everyone at Penn. And that's important, I'd say, because we believe it's the right thing to do as educators, and also because we feel that drawing a diverse cross-section of Penn to our entrepreneurship ecosystem benefits all of Wharton. And I'm sure you'll agree, our startups need engineers, artists, doctors, nurses, and probably even some philosophers. But from a people perspective, we've got also a very diverse team here. On the top left is our Vice Dean, Carl Ulrich, and some of you who are new alumni may or not have met him. He teaches one of our most popular courses on product design and development. He's also a serial inventor and entrepreneur. And then, of course, joining us today is Taylor Durham, who's our Director of Communications. And then, as an alumni, you'll probably be interfacing with Irina Yun quite a bit. She is on the top row to the right of the mission box, and she runs a lot of our alumni programming. Can you go to the next slide, Taylor? So last winter, we completed our strategic planning and we identified 5 primary paths that we've seen a lot of people take within the entrepreneurship ecosystem. There's the founders who come in knowing that they want to be an entrepreneur and they're looking to build skills, test out concepts, and connect with future collaborators. We also have the explorers who are trying to figure out what they want to do or where they fit into the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I do want to pause and mention that our Vice Dean, Carl, was an explorer for many years, and he dipped in and out of other pathways throughout his career. So he's been very adamant that we have introductory programming to attract and support people who may not even know that they necessarily want to be entrepreneurs or want to join this system. So that's been very important for us to build out over the next few years. Also, we have joiners. Here are the folks who love the entrepreneurial environment, but prefer to contribute to an existing venture for a variety of reasons. So some are better at executing than coming up with new ideas. Those are people like me. Some are not in the financial position or life stage to be a founder. And if you think of a really notable joiner who's joined a company and has gone to the very top ranks, it would probably be someone like Jeff Weiner, who has been at several companies and then is formerly the LinkedIn CEO. Another group of folks that we have are the fellows, the people who want to start, build, or engage with Venture Lab in some way as consultants, managers, or leaders. And I think they view the lab as a valuable place to hone their managerial or their technical skills and to gain some professional experience. And I'd say one, really prominent person who comes to my mind is my friend and former classmate, Jake Kramer, who's running his incubator, FedTech. In terms of investors, those folks enjoy raising and committing capital to help start or scale ventures. And a notable VC alumni there is probably Robbie Viswanathan, who's also our advisory board chair, and he was general partner at NEA as well. So now I think he's moved out and has recently established his own $1 billion fund at New View Capital. So you can be an investor and a founder as well. Can we go to the next slide, Taylor? In terms of programming, we've mapped out all of our programs to ensure that we're supporting these 5 pathways appropriately. And on this map, you can see the global nature of that. In Philadelphia, we're focusing on educating students, funding their exploration and concept testing, and helping nurture new startups. And then here, our primary customer is a student in one of the 5 pathways. And then we've also got some young alumni founders in the Philly, New York, and DC corridor. In San Francisco, our core customers are several types. There are the alumni, there are the executive MBAs, and then there are the students who are studying on the Wharton San Francisco campus. So you'll see that we have much more diverse programming to reflect that. We've got Scale School, we've got our alumni dinner, our venture initiation program that also allows for alumni to participate in, where it provides a hands-on learning and structured guidance. And then in Beijing, we're primarily supporting alumni. So we're looking to promote their entrepreneurial work and then to provide networking opportunities. Can you go on to the next slide, Taylor? One of the newest programs that we've had kicked off this past year that I think is maybe of a special interest to alumni is the Snyder Venture Consulting Program. So we launched it this past fall out of the former Small Business Development Program. It's highly selective, where we take and train Penn students to work on small consulting teams with other students to consult for startups who are their clients. So here we have a highly experienced staff guiding these students and ensuring the quality delivery of work. We're making the service available to startups at a fraction of the cost of a top-tier consultancy, and we've prioritized alumni and Penn affiliated startups as our clients versus, any other random startup. So I'd say if you're an alumni looking to start a company and you want to target customers or plan your go-to-market strategy, or just, understand how to better pivot your product, please get in touch with us and we'll be happy to help put you in touch with them. Next slide, Taylor. Tangen Hall. So here's the architect's rendering of Tangen Hall, and you'll see it also in my background as well. As you're probably aware, it's a generous gift from our Wharton alumni, most prominently Nikolai Tangen and his family, to the next generation of students. The building itself is about 68,000 square feet of space across 7 floors. And our goal here is to bring most of our entrepreneurship and innovation resources into one accessible and convenient physical location. And here, the idea is that all of the universities should know where to get started in exploring their entrepreneurial ambitions. Within Tangen Hall, the new organization that is running all of the programming is Venture Lab. And so that includes the former Penn Wharton Entrepreneurship organization, It also includes the Snyder Center that runs the consulting program, and it includes Weiss Tech Hub, which is formally part of engineering. And the idea of the co-location is that we should be able to offer an integrated set of programs. So instead of navigating the multiple schools to find help with like prototyping or designing or funding, Venture Lab is going to have a number of small hubs or spaces within it that can offer those services to any aspiring entrepreneur. Our hope here is that we can democratize innovation and entrepreneurial thinking. So even if you're not technical or you don't have a great business background in startups, you still have access to resources and tools that will help you quickly transform your ideas into businesses. We originally intended to open Tangen Hall up this fall. I'd say with COVID-19 stopping construction in the spring, we'll likely open in January of 2021 or TBD based on the course of the pandemic. But I want to re-emphasize, once we open, all of our spaces will actually be accessible to both students and alumni. So if you're an alumni in the Northeast, please skip on down to visit us. If you are on the West Coast and you're coming back to campus, we'd love to give you a tour. So also please drop on by. All of the space is available to you.
I wonder if I can chime in and just ask a question, because
Sure.
I think it's so powerful that it's Wharton Engineering and Design all coming together.
Yeah.
Which, it just, the strength in numbers, and there's so much amazing cross-pollination, and then also with other schools, I'm sure too, like medical and all of that. I wonder if you could give a perspective of what is the, I don't know, what's the impression on campus from other schools? Because obviously I feel I'm pretty dialed into the Wharton community, but what's the impression, or what do other schools hope to get out of Tangen Hall?
I can address a little bit of that, but I think that Taylor probably actually is in touch with like the pulse of student activity at campus. So I'm happy to have Taylor interject as well too. I'd say from a leadership perspective, we're hoping that the cross collaboration between Wharton Engineering and Design will help students be able to disseminate and cross-fertilize ideas, so that if you are a founder, you can go to engineering to find, maybe a technical co-founder, or, you can go to the School of Design to help you with design thinking and product fit. I'd say but that, is just maybe the tip of the iceberg, because we also don't want to pre-assume that if you are a design student or an engineer, that you wouldn't necessarily want to start up a company. And so our goal is to be able to provide those folks with education, both structured workshops and other hands-on learning opportunities for them to be able to do that. So Taylor, am I missing anything?
No, that pretty much covers it. I mean, from the student side of things, I think the energy that's across campus is felt by the fact that this is something that's like a once in a generation thing that's come to Penn, and it has the potential to be something that's super impactful. And for everybody here, I know there's because of how decentralized the university is in terms of the schools and the programs, having a physical place that entrepreneurs and innovators can call home for the first time instead of being scattered across the school is something the students are incredibly excited about. And I think in my personal conversations with them, most of it has been, when is it opening? When is it opening? When is it opening? So to that end, the energy is very much there, and we're all excited for it.
Great. Should I move on to the next slide? Okay. So here's an aerial overview of Penn's campus if you haven't visited lately. In the middle, you'll see where Huntsman Hall is on 38th and Walnut. And then if you walk west on Walnut for 2 blocks, you'll run into the McDonald's at the corner. And if you turn right and make your way past the Fry's, you'll run into Dunkin' Donuts. after you gain 10 pounds from eating the donuts, and directly across the street on 40th and Samsom is Tangen Hall. I just saw a question pop up about whether when Tangen Hall will open. So I'll defer to Taylor when he goes through the timeline on that. Right now, we're thinking January 2021, but we really have to see and understand what the pandemic will be like and whether it's safe to have so many students in the building. Taylor, do you want to go on to the next slide? Great, and here's the latest photo of Tangen Hall from about 3 weeks ago. You'll see almost all of the glass is in, except for the construction elevator and the stairs. The drywall and electric wiring are in, and they're currently putting equipment into the new kitchen. And speaking of the new kitchen, can we go to the next slide and maybe talk a little bit about the retail lab and the kitchen? Great. So a few exciting spaces and programs that will launch when Tangen Hall opens include the first floor retail lab. Once you walk into the main entryway, it will be on the left, and then the second floor food lab. And inside the retail lab, we'll be planning to showcase alumni ventures that inspire and educate Penn students. And we've got some really great ones, but we also got some new ones whom it would be great to promote. I'd say to stay true to its lab moniker, we also hope to give the Penn students or the Penn startups an opportunity to conduct customer and market research, test out products, and get customer feedback in this space. And on the right side of the slide, you'll see the food lab. It's an 800 square foot test kitchen where students and alumni can create new food and food-based products. They can experiment with culinary trends and innovations in packaging and delivery. And then you could even get Serve Safe certified, which is the industry standard for running a food startup. And so most likely, regardless of whether or not, COVID is still an issue by the time we open, you'll have to sign up for spaces because we can't have too many students or alumni in that space trying to work and use the test kitchen at the same time. But it definitely is open to alumni. Can you go on to the next slide, Taylor? So to round out some of our working spaces, we also have 5 maker studios and labs, as well as a digital media lab and a digital design studio. The maker spaces are going to be run in conjunction with Penn Engineering. They're officially called the studios, and they'll offer students the opportunity to be trained in and to use tools like laser cutters, saws, 3D printers, oscilloscopes, and hopefully even a kiln. And the digital media lab and design studio are intended to help all of our entrepreneurs with branding and digital content so that they can more effectively market and sell their new products. I'd say some of the goals or the learning goals for that would be holding workshops for folks to be able to create graphic design, web design, podcasts, AR and VR related content, and also just, good old fashioned digital videos. And now I'm going to turn it over to Taylor to talk about some of the challenges that we're working to address, our communication strategy and then our COVID-19 response.
Hey everybody. So a few of the things that we did with communications this year, we took a hard look and decided to see what we wanted to do in light of Venture Lab, because as we've discussed, Venture Lab is this new center coming to Penn, and it's something that has a chance to be very dynamic, very modern, and really tie together everybody at the university. And one of the things that we noticed about Penn is the kind of lack of integration when it comes to some of the pathways. The system itself at Penn is very fragmented, our ecosystem. There's 10 accelerators and incubators that we can count of, that we know of through our channels, and I'm sure there's more. And sometimes that leads to confusion on where to start at on your journey, or who to ask for help, or what resources to find. We're hoping that Venture Lab kind of pulls in everybody and becomes that physical nexus of our community at the university. We want Venture Lab to be the physical start here button. So if anybody should ever have a question or any concerns about entrepreneurship and innovation, they first thought in their mind is, I need to go to Venture Lab. I need to go to Venture Lab. They have what I need. They'll be the first stop on your journey. The next point is around collaboration. And this kind of goes back into the fragmented ecosystem, in that we really have the chance to kind of bring everybody together and really kind of provide a more holistic view of resources and combining the knowledge of the schools and the programs to actually provide a very well-rounded approach for our student and alumni startups to actually help them grow and succeed. For the Wharton side of things, Wharton is viewed as a very well-run, very well-oiled machine, but it can really kind of dominate the landscape in terms of entrepreneurship and innovation. And we kind of wanted to change that narrative around Venture Lab and really pivoting to it being Penn-wide. You know, it's kind of like we want to rely on Wharton to help us with the day-to-day and the internal structure of things, but the broadcasting and the messaging, we need to send out that this is for everybody across Penn, and that everybody has, you know, equal footing when they step through this door and they come into Venture Lab. And then to the diversity point, we really want to do a better job as a university and as a program of increasing diversity around entrepreneurship. And we want to really focus on, you know, underrepresented minorities, female founders, first generation founders. And normally these groups really don't reflect the landscape of entrepreneurship at the university. We know they're there and we know they're prevalent, and we want to do everything we can to make sure they have the same footing as some of their peers and that they have the same access to resources. Because we know for a fact that when you have a diverse startup and you have a diverse talent pool, it strengthens the ecosystem as a whole, and it also provides to better decision-making, and they can do so more effectively. Trang, I don't know if you wanted to add anything into the diversity part.
I'd say that in terms of diversity, we are looking and hoping to make some big investments over the next few years with, you know, a stronger mentorship program, more workshops and education for our, you know, underrepresented minority founders or folks looking to join the ecosystem, our female founders, and then of course our first generation students. I'd say another area that we are probably looking to go into is ring fencing some of our, sorry, I just heard an echo, some of our funding for, you know, these specific groups. And we're working here with, you know, some certain alumni donors to be able to do that. So I'd say look for that in the future.
So these, in our rebrand and to kind of readjust our communications as to what Venture Lab is and what we want to signal to the community, we reached out and we talked to students, we talked to alums, we talked to faculty and staff, and the general feel from the community regarding entrepreneurship was disillusionment, and that their idea maybe isn't up to par compared to their peers, or they're not ready to join yet, and accessibility, and that to some extent PWE was mainly for Wharton students. If you were an engineering student or from another school or even an alum, this didn't feel like it was really for you. You don't have the skills or the background or the prerequisite to be an entrepreneur, or you can't afford it. You can't afford it. And we know that there's a checkbox or a list of, you know, benefits that maybe some students have over others in terms of a network or finances or resources to get them started a little sooner and to make entrepreneurship a more viable endeavor. For most of the students that aren't in these categories, you know, entrepreneurship is a gamble, it's a risk. You don't come to Penn to take that kind of risk. You come to Penn to take advantage of the education and then find a career path that is promising. And what we want to do is say that for entrepreneurship, you can still take those opportunities and try and explore that ecosystem while you are a student or even an alumni, and know that this is still an option to you. For the low outreach part, you know, we kind of noticed that a part of this is our fault too when it comes to communications, and that the current website that we have is a little clunky to navigate. It's a little hard to navigate. And to effectively reach these audiences, we revisited how we're disseminating information, how are we effectively targeting everybody and making sure that they're aware of everything that's new and exciting around entrepreneurship and what's out there in the world. So we noticed that our website has kind of declined, but we've doubled down on social media, on LinkedIn, through newsletters, and those seems to be viable tools that we've used for communication to reach out to our entire community. And then again, the fractured ecosystem is that because of the siloed effect that happens at the university with the decentralization of the schools, it's very hard to find out what's my next move. Where do I go next for resources once I've gone through this incubator, this accelerator, and where to, like, who to talk to next. And hopefully with Venture Lab, we can kind of streamline that pathway for all of our students and alums that are entrepreneurs so that they can meet the right people at the right time in building their venture. So one of the things that I'm very excited about is that we are rebranding as Venture Lab. That's like one of my favorite things that I love to talk about. And some of the objectives around the Venture Lab branding, and we're rechanging a lot here, is that we want it to be completely distinctive from the current PWE logo, and we want to kind of signify start of something new at Penn. So it's kind of bookending one era of entrepreneurship and ushering in another. And through that, we want to establish Venture Lab as the physical hive of entrepreneurship at the university. But the key tenets we want people to think about when we talk about Venture Lab are accessibility, inclusiveness, innovation, and opportunity. And those are the four words I've been using over and over and over again, because that's what Venture Lab needs to be. That's what we want it to be. We want it to feel open. We want it to be approachable. We want it to be something that's not a taboo subject, or you kind of on the fence and you don't want to talk about it, or you don't want to come to us for whatever reason. We want this to be step one, square one, whatever you want to call it, for entrepreneurship and innovation at the university. And in the process of doing that, we still want to pay dues to our roots and our tradition, but we still want to have a modern 21st century approach as we move forward. And as entrepreneurs and innovators, we should always be leading the charge in terms of changing the landscape and the atmosphere and guiding the discussion about what happens at Penn. And we're really excited to partner with Pentagram on this. And a little bit about Pentagram is that they are a world-class design branding agency. I think the biggest benefit about Pentagram and why we like them is that the people who own the company also design and work with you very closely on the projects. So there's definitely a vested interest in the success of this brand. And Michael Beirut, who's our partner in this, he's a partner at Pentagram. He's working on us with this, and he actually led the charge for redesigning Wharton Magazine for the alums that do receive it. Pentagram actually received a very prestigious design award for the rebrand and the redesign of Wharton Magazine. So it's very promising to us to work with somebody who knows us, who knows our ecosystem, who knows how Penn operates and what we want to kind of instill in our students and our alum, the faculty and staff, as we bring Venture Lab into life. And the project timeline, which we're excited about, is 16 weeks. So hopefully by the end of the fall semester or close to it, we'll have this unveiling of the new Venture Lab brand, look and feel. And we're very excited to share that with the broader community. And just to briefly touch on COVID, because I know it's impacted all of our lives, we've essentially moved everything online right in the middle of the spring semester. I have to give credit to our IT team. They took the entire academic roster and moved it online in about a week. So that's like 3,000 plus classes they had to account for to move online and make sure that it was in a virtual format. All the travel was canceled and we were all working from home. I think we've been home since I think March 13th, which seems like so long ago when you talk about it, but it's been some time. But I think our team has done an amazing job at adapting to a virtual environment. And it's kind of upended our plans as well. As Trang mentioned earlier, construction on Tangen Hall kind of started recently, like maybe mid-May. And we're hoping that construction for the building is done sometime in the fall, in which case we will open in the spring. And this is just kind of a quick overview of how this whole process has happened. And then our entire community is virtual. And I think, that's a testament to our team and our program team and what we've been able to do. in light of COVID, we grew a Slack workspace, the Venture Lab Slack, that now has 1,100 members. It's what I like to call the pulse of the entrepreneurship community at Penn. It has alumni, it has faculty, directors, it has staff, and it's a very active space. And it's something that we did because we wanted to keep in touch with everybody with COVID happening early on. And it's grown into something that's kind of become an unofficial communication channel for everybody. And there's 36% engagement, but I think one of the stats we are missing is that 92% of that engagement happens in direct messaging. So even though we can't see it, we know that there's students reaching out to their peers, they're asking for advice and insights, and it's a great, thriving space, and it's something that we're incredibly proud of.
Taylor, can you tell the alumni chat is blowing up? How do they get on the Slack?
I can provide the Slack link afterwards if you want to share that out. I can pin that and share that to the group. But we definitely want everybody, alumni, mostly alumni. You know, we want more alumni in the space. It's really student driven. So more alumni in the space would be a huge benefit, especially to the current student population and to the alumni themselves. With Twitter, we have 43,000 followers, and 1% engagement doesn't sound necessarily high, but you have to consider that it's 0.08% for higher ed, and we are higher ed. So we do better than most. But we started a new Founder Friday Twitter chat, which if you haven't seen, we're going into week 5, and I'm gonna plug Tiffany Yao because she's our upcoming one for Fulfill. We've really using that platform to really dive deep and have candid conversations with founders about their startup experience. It's very informal, very free-flowing conversation, and we've gotten amazing engagement out of it, amazing responses, and we have all these different people that we're going to be talking with across the Penn community. And we would love for some of you guys to be a part of this Founder Friday chat, because I really feel that this helps put a different perspective on what entrepreneurship is. And hearing the many voices involved in entrepreneurship, I've gotten great feedback from staff, from students, and alumni that just want to tell their stories. So we're inviting you to tell your stories as well. Our programs and awards, as you know, the Summer Venture Award, the Startup Challenge, the Innovation Fund, VIP, all virtual. We did a virtual speaker series with students, actually, for students by students, to address the problems around COVID, because as you know, a lot of internships and jobs were either put on hold or postponed or dropped because of COVID. So we put on a virtual speaker series to talk to students and some alums too, just about the emotional toll of COVID, what that means, whether or not students should stop their startups and look for stable jobs and careers because of what's on the horizon, and pretty much how to keep your business afloat in times of crisis. That was a huge thing for our student community, and it was done by students, well received. We did a Doing Our Part story series, which we reached out to the alumni community and we asked who was doing their part to help combat COVID early on, whether it was through charitable donation, prototyping with PPE, offering some kind of service or support. And I think the responses poured in for that as well. I'm still updating that page, actually, with the amount of support that the Penn community has put out there to the world to do their part in combating COVID. And we have podcasts now. We have the Things Fall Apart podcast, which humanizes entrepreneurship through the lens of the students. We have Launchpad, which is hosted by Carl. And then we have the Four of a Kind podcast, which is an alumni podcast. So to wrap it up, we are now Venture Lab as of July 1, and we're very excited for that. venturelab.upenn.edu will be our new URL. It will be our new website. It's in the works. So if you guys go and visit it right now, it's not live yet, but it's in the works. We are on LinkedIn as Venture Lab. You can look for it at VNTR Lab, and same for Twitter. And then on Facebook and Instagram, we're at We Are Venture Lab. And we encourage you to follow us on all platforms. We're revamping our content to share all the news and exciting updates from the student community, from the alumni community. And in light of COVID, we're actually going to push even more content out through these channels. So you'll see individualized native content like founder interviews, updates, long form, short form content, all across these platforms. And I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. I have a few questions, and then I want to hand it over to Miriam to manage the Q&A that's coming through the chat from the attendees. So if you're listening and you have a question for the panelists, please type it into the Q&A box in the Zoom. And then Miriam will go through those and we'll get those questions answered. So one thing that I was very curious about, I mean, thank you again for the presentation. This is great update. Starting at maybe the 10,000 foot view, I'm very curious what our new dean, who I'm very excited about, by the way, perspective is on the importance of entrepreneurship on campus. Have you guys spoken to her about Venture Lab? What are her, how does that fit in with her goals for Venture Lab? I'm wondering if that discussion has been had yet.
Sure. Yeah, Carl has met with Dean James several times now. You can appreciate she's only been with us for 3 weeks. And he's continuing to meet with her on a monthly basis to provide her with updates on our work and to get her feedback. I can affirm that entrepreneurship is a key priority for her. While she was at Emory, she helped to build an innovation and entrepreneurship lab for students on campus. And so even though she's taking on the reins of Wharton during what I consider wartime with the pandemic, I'd imagine she's very much looking forward to engaging with our community in a much more hands-on fashion once she's a little bit more settled. In the meantime, we're working on, just ensuring that she gets updates and, knows that we've been handling things and they're all going pretty well.
Awesome. That's great. And yes, it's only been 3 weeks.
There's a lot
There's a lot
to handle right now.
That's fair. So, there's so much covered in this presentation, right? We talked about the consulting that's available to alums to work with students, like the retail showcase that you had with some really great alumni company like the Agni Dover was in your presentation. That's awesome. Another Wharton female founder. Where is the best one-stop shop for alums to go to kind of understand all of what Venture Lab can offer to them and how they can get involved, either in terms of, getting help from students or getting help from Venture Lab or giving back? What's the best place for alums to go to?
I guess
your website, is that the best place to go?
Taylor, you want to take that one?
Sorry.
Oh, sure, I'll take it over. So in time, our goal is that, we will have the website up and running, and then the website will be the driver for all of the information about Venture Lab and how people can get involved. In the interim, what I'm going to suggest is I'm going to plug the LinkedIn page here. We're really trying to connect with our audiences on LinkedIn if they have any questions, most notably alumni. If there are questions, we encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn. I can hear you guys joining the Venture Lab Slack as I'm talking. So I can hear the pinging noise, which is great. I love it. It's really wonderful. But we encourage you guys to follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to the newsletters, follow us on social media, because as we go through this transition year of getting Venture Lab up and running and everything happening with COVID, those are going to be the primary channels of communication to figure out how you can get involved, what is available to you, and the other news and updates from our space.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you'll get a lot of new members then from for your Slack, hopefully. And we're happy to share that link out too. Wharton is such a diverse community. It's hard to sometimes stay connected, but these efforts are a really great, great step in that direction so that we can all be connected. Maybe I just have one last question, and then I'll turn it over to Miriam to go through the questions from our attendees. I guess the last thing I wanted to ask about is VIP. I wanted to see if you guys wanted to talk a little bit about that, or it's perhaps something that Miriam could talk about, since I know she is a participant, but I know that's something where applications are actually open now for alums. And maybe if you could say a few words about that, if you're in a position to do so.
Hi. Yeah, so I just completed, I'm an entrepreneur as well as being part of the WAPA team, and just completed the VIP program in the San Francisco campus. We actually only had one IRL meeting before it was all on Zoom. But it's really, in San Francisco, it's really taking kind of the power of the Bay Area entrepreneurial community and bringing that onto campus and extending that to both current students who are either joining the executive MBA program or who are in the semester in San Francisco program, and as well as Bay Area alumni. And it's a 4-month intensive program that brings on different resources to help startups with some traction kind of accelerate their growth. It was really fantastic for us, for my startup, just to have kind of that one-on-one mentorship with Len Lodish and with Steve Edelman, who run the program. And it also was just really great to kind of be in a conversation on a regular basis with other entrepreneurs who are kind of facing the same challenges in a safe space. So highly recommend everybody checking out that program. We're also, little preview, we're working on putting together an AMA for next week for female founders that might be interested in hearing more about the program from some of the alumni that have recently graduated. So stay tuned on the WAPA channels for that.
Cool.
I hope I didn't miss anything.
Taylor, did you want to add anything there?
No, I'm a firm believer that the best public speakers about a program are the ones a part of it. So Miriam did a great job at summarizing it, in my opinion. So I think that's great.
Cool. And then maybe we can post a link to how you can apply in the chat box. Great. So Miriam, I'll just keep it, your ball's in your court. Why don't we tick through the questions from our attendees? You're muted, Miriam.
Sorry about that, guys. You know, it's interesting, Taylor, your comment about just sort of the silos that exist in Penn, and I think there are there were a lot of questions coming in around sort of different communities and how they are going to be able to interact with Venture Lab. So I'm just going to call out specific ones, and then maybe you can kind of talk through how any details that you know. And if you don't know yet, then maybe we can kind of put it in the parking lot. So some questions about specifically the law school and the medical school, the non-Penn community. So a question around like, how does the community at large interact with the building and the spaces, and also I know there's some interest about on the investment side about Chestnut Street Ventures, and if they're going to have any direct involvement.
Sure. So the last two I'll leave to Trang about the community-wide thing and about the Chestnut Street Ventures. But for the programs across the university, the program team has gone out and talked to almost every imaginable school and program and center, kind of giving them the insight on what's happening with Venture Lab. I could say that I've talked to some surprisingly non-entrepreneurial places like the digital media design program in engineering and School of Fine Arts in the English department, and bringing them into the mix. Right now, one of the game plans is to find a way to kind of reach out to folks like the nursing accelerator, the innovation accelerator in the nursing school, and bring them into the mix, because what we notice is that even though they're students in these programs, they're still a part of VIP overall at the end of the day. And it's finding ways to kind of bring together strategic support and offerings and partnerships to support them. So one of the things that we had talked about early on is finding ways to do like joint programming or workshops and things along those lines at a broader scale. Trang, early on when we were talking about Venture Lab, way back when, had mentioned like maybe a potential partnership with like Wharton Social Impact to bring in speakers and guests along those lines. And hopefully extending that kind of replicating that same approach across the different places. For Penn Law, we do a lot with the Deccan IP Clinic and with the Legal Entrepreneurship Clinic already. when it comes to sending students that way and sending alums that way that have questions about IP strategy or company formation. I'm sure those ties will strengthen as, you know, Venture Lab grows and as we kind of fold in more and more opportunities. But Trang, I think, is better equipped to talk about the community at large with Philadelphia.
Trang, do you want to say a few words, or you muted?
Unmute. Okay, great. Thank you. So I guess there are two questions. One is how we will work with the community in Philadelphia. Is that correct? And then the second is specifically groups like Chestnut Street Ventures. How will we work with them? All right, so I'll take the first question. I'd say, you know, it's a great privilege to lead Venture Lab now. If you think about who we are, we're one of the largest incubators in the Mid-Atlantic region. And in terms of looking at the Philadelphia community at large, I'd say we are hoping to build on the existing advantages that Philadelphia has. We're hoping to partner with some of our peer organizations within the nearby universities and colleges. And our goal there is that this will provide more opportunities for our students to interact with, share ideas, and work with each other. And also, you know, I know Philadelphia's incubator and alumni investors have been extremely supportive of Penn startups. So we are working internally as a staff team to coordinate with them and to identify and fill in skills needs and systemic funding gaps. I know there's constant chatter among recent graduates about the drop-off in funding and resources, but I actually think that that's more due to the siloed nature of funding here rather than any real drop-off in funding. I'd say we're working right now with a number of industry companies to build partnerships, and we're not just looking at the national level, but we're looking more deeply into the regional businesses, especially in healthcare, retail, and technology, so that we can bring in local experts into the Northeast ecosystem and get their expertise, their network, their resources for our student and alumni ventures. And I'd say our broad goal here is to make it more attractive for you as a student to want to come to Penn, and for you as an alumni to transition out of the classroom and into the real world setting and lay down your company roots in Philadelphia. And having that vibrant community and the thriving local economy makes it easier for our startups to build and to be able to sell their products. And in turn, we're hoping that the community benefits from the increased economic activity and the long-term residents that are being nurtured by our startups. So the end result should be a virtuous cycle of 10 startups engaging with a flourishing Philadelphia community, and then a bigger pie for everyone who wants to start, build, and explore here. In thinking specifically about, or groups like Chestnut Street Ventures, we have a small team that within our staff who is working on partnerships specifically. We are looking, to reach out to all of our alumni groups who are doing any kind of funding. And we're starting first with our alumni groups before we go on to the wider investor community, because we feel that our alumni will probably have a little bit more vested interest to care about our alumni startups. And so our hope there is to be able to bring groups onto campus so that even if you're not a student and you're an alumni startup, you'll know that there's one day where Red and Blue Ventures is in Tangen Hall, for example, and listening to pitches, or what the Chestnut Street Ventures is there listening to pitches throughout the whole day. And we are talking to a small subset of alumni investors in terms of understanding and kind of building out workshops and programming that are focused on, identifying some of the biases in funding for women, for minorities, and for first generation startup founders. And so we hope to be able to, announce something within the coming year on that. Any other questions?
Another question came up that's kind of related to the investor question, which is, what are the primary sources of funds for the program beyond the building?
Can I ask for some clarification on that question? Because I answered it on, on the Zoom chat, but I wasn't sure that I answered it correctly, because I'm not sure if by program you mean our organization. How is our organization funded, or if you mean how can somebody who's looking to be an entrepreneur and a startup founder, how can you access funding?
The way maybe I'll let Rob, if he's still on, maybe drop any clarification in the chat. I kind of interpreted it as like the operations within the building, but
sure. Yeah, that's how I thought. That's how I thought it was. But well, we are an organization. Both Tangen Hall and our Venture Lab organization is 100% alumni funded. We actually don't take any funding from the school, or I'd say if there was, it's very, very minimal. So I can't say don't. But almost all of our funding is from alumni through gifts and endowments. And so we've just been very lucky that our, longtime alumni are incredibly generous. Tangen Hall is 100% alumni funded as well.
Great. Yeah, and Rob said, yes, that's the org. Two questions about the sort of industry specific constraints or non-constraints. Somebody asked about nonprofits and also about like the shipping and logistics industry. So not necessarily like the two things that we saw, which are food, or are there any constraints on industry to work with Venture Lab?
I'd say if you are a student or alumni looking to start a company in any of those areas, there are no constraints. You don't have to only start a for-profit company. A few of our, and we've been trying to feature founders of nonprofits in our Founder Friday chat to kind of combat the idea that, you have to be a Warby Parker with a grand vision to take over the eyeglass industry, or to, disrupt that market in order to be a founder and to be part of our programming and to get our resources. So I'd say there's definitely not. And if there is a misconception about that, then we know that we have to do a better job of combating that misperception.
Two last questions that came through. One is about the ability to support students with real life mentors and leaders in their field. Is that something that's part of the programming or plan?
Sure. So we have we have a landscape of different types of mentoring, coaching, and support services for students that are outside of our VIP programming. On the very low touch side, we have our Experts in Residence program, where we bring in founders, lawyers, consultants, whatnot, for a day. They lead a presentation or a workshop, and then they have time slots where anyone can make an appointment and talk to them with whatever question that person has, whether it's how do I get more customers for my business, or do I even want to be a VC? So that's like more on the low touch side. And then we have on the very, much more high touch side, we have our mentorship program. So we had a female founders mentorship program that we were piloting over the past 2 years, and it pairs one female founder with 2 to 3 mentors who are, we go and look for mentors that are, that feel like a skills or a gap in, the founder's need. And so we pair them up for 3 months, and they meet over the course of 3 months with a set of goals. And similarly, this summer, we're expanding that to, our VIP startups and our startup challenge winners. And the reason that we started off there is because we wanted founders who have real issues that they're working on to get the most out of that mentorship relationship. And so we are probably going to take that pilot and expand that to, more VIP founders and startups over the next year.
Great. Well, I know we're a little bit over already. Thank you so much for bearing with us, and appreciate the extra time. Taylor, would you mind sharing your contact us screen again so that everybody can note down your info if they have follow-up questions that we didn't get a chance to answer in this chat? We'll also share that with everyone who registered in the thank you email that'll go out as soon as this video is edited and posted. So if you missed anything, you can go back and reference it. The last two things I wanted to mention are WAFA does have a couple of opportunities for founders to connect with investors and get feedback. We are starting a salon series where we invite founders, a select group of founders and a select group of investors to have an informal Zoom chat. Very small group, very close, not open to the public, but a great opportunity to get informal feedback on your pitch if you're fundraising. That's something that is open now. So go to hellowafa.org. Make sure you're on our mailing list, because when we put out calls for interested folks, that's how we do it, is through email. And then also would encourage any founders who want to better connect with alumni investors to go to hellowafa.org and fill out our Connect with WAFA form. We will be working with some alumni investors to, again, connect them to alumni founders to provide feedback and to help with fundraising. So 2 additional opportunities I wanted to highlight for alumni founders. Well, Trang and Taylor, thank you again so much for joining us today. This was incredibly informative. I feel like I've learned a lot. I feel like I'm back in Philly a little bit, which is a very nice feeling. And can't wait to see everything new that's getting rolled out. And we'll definitely stay in touch with everything on all of your digital channels now. I'm super excited about pooling together entrepreneurship on campus. It's a tremendous opportunity, and thank you both so much for your leadership and for taking the time to chat with WAFA today.
Great. Thank you, WAFA. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.